Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the March edition of the MPF webinar series. We're glad you're here and delighted to welcome our panel and my co-host, Uri Gutfreund, my partner in crime. Uri, how you doing?
I'm well, John. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, looking forward to getting back out on the road, hopefully soon.
Yes.
Michael Hurley, how are you today?
I'm doing great, John. Good to see you. Very good to see you, John. Nice to see you as well.
We were just talking. You're heading out to a conference in June. Is that correct? And out in California.
Crossed, John.
You can't drive there from New York, can you? That'd take a while.
No, you can drive, but it'll take a while.
It would take a while. I could see you now in your Winnebago, driving cross country, hitting the Continental Divide. I can see it now. Glad you're here, Michael. John Pinney, good to see you. And how are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for asking. Thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Thank you. John's in Cleveland, Ohio. And it looks like you're in your office, John.
I'm actually in our offices, yeah, and we had a pretty sizable meeting here, so it's probably an appropriate time to have this discussion. So
It didn't look like lighting that might be in your living room or your home-based office. That's drew that conclusion. I'm in Atlanta, world headquarters. We've had some volatile weather this week, and been trying to limp along without power and the internet for a good part of the week, but we're back in the saddle and ready to roll. We've got a really, I think, timely topic. A lot of firms talking about returning to the office, work from home policies. Do we move to a more hybrid model as we work our way through COVID? So we have two exceptionally talented managing partners who have thought a lot about this issue and have different opinions. So we're going to hear from both of them, and there's no right or wrong answer to this. And hopefully you'll leave today with some good thoughts to get you guys rolling on developing your model going forward. If you want to go more virtual or bring folks back to the office, but now's the time to start thinking up your plan. As we work our way through COVID. Texas announces they're 100% back in business this today, and Mississippi, a couple other states. So firms are really giving thought to this, and so we appreciate our panel. I'm looking at the time, and we are at that top of the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. Today's program, officially, we're calling it Point Counterpoint. Hang on, I jumped my slides. Should we bring folks back to the office or rethink our workplace model? And my partner in crime, Uri Gutfreund, we chatted briefly. Uri, good to see you.
Good to see you too, John. It's going to be a doozy today.
Any brief announcements you want to make as we get started?
This is the issue of the month, maybe the year. Glad we're doing it today.
I think it is timely, and most of you all know me. We've got 198 people registered today. This is our 20th webinar since COVID struck about a year ago, and this is our number 3 most attended. PPP loan. We did 2 iterations of the PPP loan, and that was number 1 and number 2, and so this is our 3rd most popular program. That's a little bit about my background. I'm on the speaking trail and run these managing partner programs. Few announcements, then we'll jump in. Our webinar series, Uri and I put these on first Wednesday of the month, 2 o'clock. And we're trying to get in a good rhythm and plan these programs about 2 months out, so we are timely. And I think our next program is likely to be a follow-up to this conversation, where we're going to talk about how do you assess where your firm should go as we look at returning to office versus hybrid or remote type models, and how do you figure out what's right for your firm? Are you talking to your people, your clients, other firms in town? And we're going to drill down on that a little bit to try to give folks some pretty good advice in this area. We're going to do a virtual conference. We did our last month's program. We had a couple of women managing partners, well received. So we're going to do a virtual conference, a 3-hour program. Focusing on women in leadership and building a culture that empowers and sponsors women in leadership roles. So that should be a great program. We've locked in on that date, figuring out who our faculty are going to be now. So stay tuned. That'll be coming up. We run our listserv, our conference calls, great resources to help managing partners be more effective. We got our weekly e-newsletter and these live conferences. We still have on the books our leadership conference, May 5 and 6 here in Atlanta. As we get close to having to make a go, no-go decision, I'm leaning toward no-go at this point. I just think it's too early, but we'll make a formal announcement on that next week. So if you're registered,
I have a historical note here. We have John and Michael, both veterans of the MPF Leadership Conference in Atlanta, right?
Yes.
Both of them. Amazing.
Yes.
Correct.
And they loved every minute of it.
It was a great conference. And
thank you.
And John and I met there, as a matter of fact, and we've stayed in touch since that time.
You know, that's what's so great about these conferences is the friendships and the relationships that carry forth. And I didn't realize that you all knew each other until we had our dress rehearsal on Monday evening. And so, I mean, it's just terrific. It's not easy leading lawyers, and to have, you know, a community of folks you can relate to and share with and learn from is I think, you know, fantastic. So glad we served that role. We're going to do a fall symposium for sure in Chicago. I think that's a safe date, October 7th. So we drilled down on a topic and still working through what that might be. We're leaning towards succession planning right now, which covers a lot of different things. So stay tuned for what we got going on, and we are glad you're here. With that, we will introduce our guest speakers, John and Michael. We're going to showcase some of the survey results. When y'all registered, we had you answer a couple of questions. We honed in on productivity when people work at home. We're going to engage in some panel discussions, some audience polling questions. As we go, you can type in questions. Uri keeps an eye on that box. Uri, briefly walk us through how folks do that.
Sure. On your GoToWebinar toolbar, you'll see on the side something that says questions. On the questions, please type in your questions. We're going to sort of gather them as the program goes through, combine it with the questions that you gave us during registration, and we'll, as time permits, we'll throw them at our panelists, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Uri. And you know, we've at registration, we have you answer a couple of questions, including what questions do you have for our guest speakers? And Uri was sharing, this is the most ever in terms of questions. So hopefully we'll answer some of those questions. We do the best we can. And we'll follow up with some handout material that'll have some articles and additional resources. That's John and Michael, if they have anything they want to share, to toss them in there. And so hopefully we'll help you work through this very important consideration in terms of our office and work from home policies going forward. Our next webinar will be April 1st, Wednesday in April. So that takes us to the 7th. And we'll get that set up, and you'll be hearing more about that in the not too distant future. So let me get back. I'm out of sync. Michael Hurley, welcome. Michael is the managing partner of a law firm in New York City, Cassin and Cassin, 45 lawyers. Michael's a commercial real estate attorney and has served in a couple of organizations, past president of the Mortgage Bankers Association of New York, involved in his alma mater, the YMCA, so that's good to see, giving back to the community, and got his law degree at Fordham University. So Michael, glad you're here. Did I miss anything on your bio that you want people to know? No? Okay.
All good, thank you.
And John Pinney, this is John's second MPF webinar where he has been kind enough to join us as a guest speaker. John is the managing partner of a firm in Cleveland, Ohio, a Meritas firm. Meritas is one of those law firm networks, one of the more established and mature networks. And John's very involved in that group and a thought leader among managing partners of Meritas member firms. He's a corporate lawyer, does some estate planning. He's got a cool thing, that rock and roll Hall of Fame. I'll bet you get invited to some really cool parties, John.
They're expensive too.
Some stories. We're gonna ask you some questions. John's been on our faculty at our live conference, been on some panels and such, and his law degree from Ohio-based Cleveland State University. John Pinney, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having us. When you registered, we asked you just 3 simple questions plus an open-ended questions for the guest speakers. And first, we asked about partner productivity since COVID struck. We've had a year. We've had a chance to look at how partners are performing, and look at this. This is consistent. We've asked this question several times over the course of these webinars, and this is what we've seen from the get-go. Overall, partner productivity is holding strong, even an uptick among some partners without a commute and distractions in the office find themselves more productive. That's a case for letting people work at home. If we look to our associates, here's where we see some perceived decreases in productivity as our associates work from home. And John, Michael, does this surprise you?
I would say,
John, it doesn't really surprise me. Your prior slide showed partner productivity, level to up, and partners are generally big picture, spending a lot of their time on the phone and networking and reviewing what associates are doing. And the associates are, they're pushing more paper. They perhaps have more distractions at home. They're younger, young families. They're raising kids, maybe a dog. Those numbers don't surprise me at all. How about you, John?
And they're probably looking to get fed too. And if the partners aren't feeding them, John, what's your reaction to these productivity statistics, partners, associates?
I think the partner slide is consistent with what I would have expected. I am a little bit surprised by the associate production number with the moderate decrease, but I mean, it was a disruptive year, and a lot of associates are probably dealing with childcare issues. So it isn't shocking, and it's certainly not a number that blew me away. But in our firm, I'd say that we were pretty consistent with our associate productivity. So it's a little bit different from what we experienced, but to me, it is a little bit surprising, but it's not shocking.
Okay, now let's look at these productivity numbers when it comes to our support staff. We've seen these numbers statistically, I mean consistently, as we've run this question. And support staff, maybe we don't have the spare bedroom, and they've got the kids running around, and it's harder to perhaps measure their productivity. Michael Hurley, what say you to this?
It has not been our experience, John, but I understand it. I think it's specific to the nature of your practice and your business and how you lever your staff. But these numbers don't necessarily surprise me. It's not our experience. Our support staff has been quite productive, perhaps less efficient, but productive, and the two are very different. Which may explain why we paid more overtime in 2020 than we have in the history of the firm. But yeah, I think you can be very productive and be less efficient.
Don?
But I'm not surprised in general by these numbers.
I'm sorry, Michael, I'm sorry?
I'm not, in general, I'm not surprised by these numbers.
John, how's your staff performing this year?
I think our staff did an incredible job. I will say this. I think, John, at the beginning, you mentioned that it is harder to measure. It's easy to measure lawyer performance based on hours. And so you could track that with staff. It's a little bit more difficult. And this could be a perception issue. It's probably, in my opinion, attributable to the fact that a lot of staff were simply displaced because of moving to a remote environment and dealing with some of the circumstances that we had to operate under. So the moderate decrease may just be attributable to the fact that we were not in a physical environment and they were somewhat displaced in terms of their day-to-day duties. I would expect and hope that firms would quickly pivot and start to take that into account and figure out how to deploy their staff in a way that makes them more productive. And that's what we're dealing with.
I think Uri, you can back me up, and we chat with a lot of managing partners, and our lawyers were pretty mobile with laptops and remote connectivity before COVID struck. Not so much our support staff. They weren't equipped with the laptops, and in many cases, they didn't have Wi-Fi at home. And it was a little harder to get them adjusted and working efficiently and productively at home. They just weren't equipped.
John, I think it's also, you said they weren't equipped, they weren't trained, but also there's an extra element is that the workflow wasn't set. Let's face it, pre-COVID, the way you gave your support staff legal work a lot of the times was, hey, Joe, I got something for you. You'd shout down the hall. So they weren't used to that workflow. So I think it's frankly a systems issue as well. So it was they didn't used to work from home, and so firms have to catch up and figure out how to dole out the work electronically. And as John Pinney mentioned, track that and put some of that infrastructure in, which I know we'll talk about.
We did a session earlier, maintaining productivity when people work at home, and Sharon Abrahams was one of our guest speakers, and she talked about that communication you have with your paralegal, your legal assistant, and just being available, accessible, and it might not be 9 to 5. I got kids at home, and I don't have a spare bedroom, and I just don't have those resources that a lot of the lawyers might have. But communicating, empathy, and just coordinating. And you're right, it's a disruption to the normal kind of workflow and interaction we might have. But there's some interesting data, folks, to consume, and certainly on the support staff side, this might give us an argument to bring them back to the office if they're not being productive working remotely. And so let's do our first audience polling question, and then we're going to bring up our first guest speaker to open us up and talk about the arguments to bring folks back to the office. But for the benefit of Michael and John, if folks would go ahead and this is your first of 3 votes. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. We know how to vote down here. Counting the ballots seems to be a bit people arguing about that, but if you would go ahead and weigh in. It looks like about 85% of you are, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We've got probably skewing toward larger firms than we normally attract to today's program. 20% more than 100 lawyers, and not too many less than 10 lawyer firms here today. So that gives us a sense of firm sizes on the room. So without any further delay, let me go ahead and turn the program to our friend Michael Cassin, who will talk to us about, should we return to the office? Yes, no, maybe? Talk to us, Michael.
Thanks, John. Although I've been here a long time, my last name is not Cassin, it's Hurley. But we'll see. John, I think we're gonna. What's probably gonna come out of this is our participants are gonna go home with even more to think about than they came in.
We're gonna confuse them, Michael.
They're looking for hard and fast answers, and there aren't any. And I think this analysis and decision is unique to every law firm, and we spend a lot of time analyzing it. But it's dependent on a lot of different factors, and one of which is firm culture, right? And every managing partner likes to think they have the best firm culture out there, but very few can actually define it. So the first place you might want to look is what was your tolerance for work from home before the pandemic? And I know a lot has changed, but did you care if people were in the office or not care? Didn't matter as long as they were billing time. In our particular case, we wanted people in the office before the pandemic. Our policy was 2 days a month you can work from home. I don't care why you're doing it. That's fine. So it wasn't a situation where we had people in 3 days, out 2 days. So that's a place to start. You know, as part of your culture, how important is your billable hour? And I know it's important to everybody, but here at Cassin, we don't have minimum billable hours, right? So if you're looking to monitor productivity and all you have to look at is billings, and everyone's being productive at home, well, you know, that's helpful information, helpful data. You know, is it a collaborative environment you're looking for? Do you have one? Teamwork? Certainly easier to do it in person than from home. Social connectivity, you know, are your people finding opportunities to socialize together outside of work? Are they getting together without you planning the firm outing or the virtual event? Is that important to you? I think it's sort of the glue for considering yourself a team is what kind of social connectivity do your people have? Geography, you know, are you in a metropolis, in the city, urban or suburban network setting? Do people have to get on mass transit, get in the subway, a train? Those are all factors I think you have to consider as you're determining whether or not to bring people back to the office. In our case, we have 4 offices. One is our primary office is in Manhattan, so we reimburse for parking. If people are not comfortable getting on a train or subway or a bus, they want to drive in, we'll reimburse them for parking. Career advancement, as part of your culture, what's the path there? Is it, you know, when I was a junior associate, someone handed me a sheet about business development and what you can do as a first or second year associate. And one of the 10 items on there was to treat your partners like clients. Well, if your partners are in the office, you know, you may want to be in the office as well. So that's important. Your mentor-mentee, do you have a formal process for that? All these things are part of your culture and things to consider. What type of practice do you have? Is it better suited for in the office, or can you do it remotely? Our practice is transactional. We closed almost 2,000 commercial transactions last year. We push a lot of paper, and you can do it and you can function remotely, and we did it quite well. But we want to do more than function, right? We want to grow better. And that means being more efficient, not only productive but being more efficient. So certainly it can be done, but we push a lot of paper, and John knows this because he's been on the receiving end of some of that paper with some of his clients borrowing money from our clients. So it's important for us to be in person. I think your firm size matters, right? Maybe it's a little bit easier to call everyone back to the office if you're smaller, and the larger you are with offices all over the place, and you've got to keep track of where people are and what they're doing and the different state laws as it relates now to the pandemic as far as gathering. I do think it's a bit, you know, we're a small mid-sized firm. I think it's a little bit easier for us to call people back to the office than a big firm. And there's fewer exceptions to policies because, unfortunately, although we like to say there's no exceptions, there's always exceptions. You know, productivity, are you measuring it? How are you measuring it? Is it the billable hour, or do you have software, or is it just income over expense? That's certainly something you want to be looking into. And what's your real estate, you know, telling you? What's your lease situation if you lease? If you got 8, 9, 10 years left on your lease, you're going to make your decision a little bit different if you've got 2 or 3 years left on the lease.
So there's a lot of things to consider,
yeah.
And no right size fits all.
No.
And John,
No,
Michael, Michael Hurley, by the way, everybody, Michael Hurley. Michael has taken the point of we need butts in the office. Law firms run best in person. We're a firm, collaborative, team, share, cross-sell. I like it. You know, we talk about that sort of stuff all the time. You talked about these reasons why you want people back in the office if we're going to be a high-performing law firm. You touched on some of these things, the teamwork, the mentoring, the onboarding of new talent. Hard to do remotely. And then I like the last bullet point you got here, Michael, which is the social responsibility. To be a good downtown citizen, support the local businesses, and be a part of the fabric of your community as something to consider as well.
It's a consideration, John. You know, offices are the vibrancy of surrounding areas, and as we all like to say, oh, isn't it terrible what's happening to the restaurant and retail business as we sit at home? You know, coming into Manhattan and buying an $18 salad every day, I feel like we're doing something for some of the local shops, and it's important. I did want to touch upon, you know, the office buzz, right? And how important that is. One of the greatest things for me every day is walking around the office and seeing how people are interacting, right? We're social beings, right? We're wired for connection. Even lawyers are wired for connection. And so I think it's for us. And again, I preface everything with an asterisk. It's for us because it's your own individual law firm's decisions. But for us, it's important. And the most important things I have learned in my career have been in the presence of others. It's not what I read. It's not what I wrote. It's not what I heard. It's what I experienced. And I think, again, it sort of gets back to what are you looking to do? And I think we owe it to our junior people, our associates in particular, if we're trying to groom them for something better than Zoom calls. I think it's the in-person interaction, and those are just, you know, there's some of the things to consider as you sit down in your management roles and discuss, you know. Yes, they all come back. No, everyone stays home. You do some sort of hybrid.
And Michael, I'm glad you clarified office buzz, because I thought you were talking about getting stoned in the stairwell with some of your colleagues at lunchtime. So I'm glad you clarified that. all very strong arguments to getting folks back together, collaborating. Number one word we hear when we ask law firm managing partners to describe the firm culture: collaborative. Collegial's number two. And as you were saying, it's hard to achieve that collegial, collaborative teamwork and sharing remotely. This is a point you made as well, Michael, as you assess if you want to get people back in. Tune into them.
Yeah, absolutely. We pretty early on in the process surveyed our people.
Did a survey.
We did, you know, and you have to be guided by it in part. But I think it's important to be empathetic, to provide, all of this obviously is prefaced on providing a safe workplace, right? The health and safety of our people, we can all agree, is the most important thing.
Was that survey, what'd you do, an online, anonymous sort of survey?
Yeah, online anonymous, and we found a lot of people were looking forward to being back in
Did
the
you
office.
separate partners from associates from support staff within those surveys so you could kind of see differences?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you found that helpful as a managing partner to kind of set your policy, reinforce your thinking on the model you guys wanted to build coming out of COVID?
Yeah, I think you have to listen to your people. You don't have to always do what they want or think is best, but sometimes it's important to just have a voice.
Beautiful.
And unless you're surveying them, you're not giving them a voice.
I work with a lot of, managing partners. People need to be in the office. It's important. I feel strongly about this issue. Only recently has technology allowed us to support this remote working situation. And geez, I just don't like it. it's counter to the culture we're trying to build here at this law firm. So good points all, and you made this point well. Human beings are social. We want to be connected. I work out of my home here. I live by myself. Believe me, I am stir crazy. I can't wait to get out. And the psychological impacts are probably more than I'd like to admit. So Michael, thank you very much for kind of setting us off. And let me
John,
now,
just if I may,
invite our counterpoint. Michael, I'm sorry, do you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I just on this, we're social beings. I think as you consider what's best for your firm, consider the work from home environment, right? A lot of times your people, we talked about this, about productivity versus efficiency, right? And when you're working from home, there are no boundaries. There's no signal, there's no event that signals the end of the workday. And maybe it's important to have boundaries between your work life and your home life. And I think a short commute provides, a transition for that.
Well, and Sharon made the point that if you are working remotely, it's important to have a defined workspace where you can eliminate the distractions and separate work from non-work and have that boundary. And that might be why some people are more productive, is they can't turn it off at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And the partner's going to have that defined workspace, and maybe even the associate, but it's a pretty good chance a lot of staff isn't.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Michael, thank you so much. And now let's turn our focus to Mr. Pinney, and he's going to provide our counterpoint that hybrid's really the way you should go. That's the future. John?
First of all, I just want to say I agree a lot with Michael's thinking, and he runs an incredible firm. We've had the pleasure of being opposite them, and the amount of work they do, and they punch so high above their weight that it wouldn't make sense that they need to be there just because of the incredible transactional practice they have. So, but he said it best, every law firm's different, and we have a different client base, and we're built a little bit differently. So yeah, I think our approach has been slightly different, and I'll give you everybody a little bit of background. So I think on March 13th of 2020, we really flipped the switch and went remote. We have been remote since. It was relatively seamless. Probably one of the best management decisions I inadvertently made was about the year before making the decision to go remote, was we converted every attorney to a Surface tablet, and most of our senior staff and support staff. And so when we went remote, it was, like I said, pretty seamless. It allowed us to operate very quickly in a remote environment and continue to service our clients. And so we had a terrific 2020, and have really, we've seen some increases in productivity, but I'll talk about some of the challenges that we're seeing. So we also have polled our folks, not in a formal way, but I've talked to virtually everybody, and I'd say that we're evenly split. And so going into this, we felt that the traditional law practice and office for a mid-sized to small firm like ourselves was really under attack and threat. And so it's just been a viewpoint of mine. I've spoken about it many times, and the presentation there, the slide that's in front of you, is from one of the presentations I gave previously with John and Uri. So, and I'll walk you through them. Yeah, I think the law firm evolution, if you will, has been accelerated by COVID-19. I think we'll start to see more disruption in our industry, more competitors. As I note here, technology and cybersecurity investments will continue to increase. We are seeing through our clients a substantial uptick in cyber attacks and penetrations. It's a real problem. So those firms who have those types of practice areas and expertise are going to continue to thrive. And really starting to understand how to provide service to your clients in that space is critical to your future, because it is the future. I think there'll be a 30 to 50% reduction in office space on a go-forward basis, just because we're becoming more paperless. I think COVID has accelerated that move. I also think there's more hoteling and more efficiency. And I also think just from a management standpoint, it makes sense to reduce your footprint. So to put into context, I think we currently have 45,000 square feet of space, and there's probably 5 people in the offices today between our 2 offices in Ohio. So I would say that that's not exactly a good ROI, but our leases are up, I think, in 3 and 4 years respectively. So I can assure you that we will be negotiating very carefully those leases. And I don't know if we'll fully contract at 50%, but I would definitely look to reduce our footprint, assuming that we continue with the hybrid approach, which I'll talk about shortly. And then the benefits of the law office and the hybrid model is travel costs are down because more people are doing virtual conferences, although I desperately miss live conferences. And so I do look forward to some of those. I think there'll be a spring back very quickly. John, I'm sure you're happy to hear that.
I am, but it's going to be a while.
As someone who has attended your conferences and got to meet Michael actually at that conference, and Uri, I really did enjoy the conference. For those of you who haven't attended, I encourage you to do so. Anyhow, just moving on, I think the future of law is, and the law office, if you will, it's a cloud-based, advanced, remote environment, and efficiency and technology will continue to be critical. And we invest heavily. Through the pandemic, we converted into a brand new CRM system, did it in 90 days, and it paid enormous dividends. We did all that internally in-house with our staff. We are in the process of finalizing, I think Karina, our marketing director, is on the phone. On March 15th, we'll launch a new website that we built internally and did all the graphics internally. Very proud about that. So we've actually built the internal teams to do those types of things as opposed to outsource them, because we just want to be more efficient. So we took the downtime with the staff perhaps and the efficiencies we've picked up, and we threw at our staff very large projects like a website, and also to add more to it, we're going through a document management conversion. We're moving to a more advanced document management system and moving out of a more obsolete system. So all of this is designed to improve our efficiency on a go-forward basis and to provide us better overall cloud-based technology. Next slide.
And for context, John, you all are in downtown Cleveland, correct, with a satellite
Correct.
office in the Cleveland suburbs?
No, we have an office in Cleveland and downtown Columbus.
Columbus, okay. Both
Yep.
downtown locations.
Yep.
Okay.
And they're both pretty empty right now, so I appreciate you reminding me of that, John. So.
And rent was due 3 days ago.
I see the check every month and I just shake my head. But anyhow, I think, like I said, we are moving towards a hybrid approach, and I'll talk about that shortly. You may want to move to the next slide, John.
Indeed.
Okay, so I've talked about this in the past, and this is more about the implications of COVID, but these are some of our thoughts on the immediate and long-term implications. Obsolescence has become more apparent in our view. I'll talk about that briefly, but I mentioned cyber ransomware attacks it's an increased risk. You see what just happened with Jones Day and other big firms. As Michael mentioned, the impact is certainly relevant to culture, morale, training, mentoring. We haven't solved those. Nobody has. The only real way to solve it is to go back to a more full-time in-office environment. I still believe that law firms will continue to evolve into quasi-technology firms, just like what's happening in fintech. It's going to happen in law tech, and that merger's happening faster and been accelerated by COVID. The ALPS or AFs, the alternative legal service providers and AFAs, alternative fee arrangements, we'll continue to see growth in both of those spaces. I think, John, you're going to talk about some of the statewide jurisdictional reforms that are on the table. I think it's a very timely topic, probably something that you'll be doing a seminar on soon. Mm-hmm. And then one thing that we're definitely going to see is on our end as a firm is we're going to hire more non-lawyers from out of market. And with the remote environment, it allows us to get access to geographic talent that we really haven't targeted in the past. So, some final points is the remote work. We'll have to figure out how to implement it within a business structure. And then I think all this translates into some form of erosion of what I call licensure jurisdictional boundaries. We currently have an associate working out of Boston, and we have another one who's heading to Colorado, and we fully embrace that. We recognize there's significant challenges with it, but we feel that it's necessary to retain our talent.
And you're going to set up a call center in the Philippines, right? Your customer service center. You're going to.
Right, would
I've been
be
dealing
cheaper.
with Comcast quite a bit this week, so I
Right.
chatting with them over there. It's right.
Yeah.
John, you've
really,
mentioned keeping
go ahead.
your
I'm sorry.
people in Boston and Colorado. Sounds like those are people who were with you pre-COVID. These are trusted, valued employees. And it's
Absolutely.
a goal, though, to expand that, it sounds like, to hire someone in Colorado, not just allow someone to move to Colorado.
We would absolutely do it. We struggle to find talent. It's hard enough. We're in a very mature market in Ohio and Cleveland, which is our home. We compete with some very, very big firms. We have a deep, deep bench of large firms, including the home of Jones Day and Baker Hostetler. So, if we can find talent outside of our market and they're licensed in the state of Ohio, we feel good about doing that. We'll deal with the challenges as they come.
I've worked with firms in Hawaii who outsource a lot of their, they've got lawyers on the mainland, and the cost of living in Hawaii is high, and a lot of these young lawyers can't afford it, and so they farm it into the states. And you mentioned the jurisdictional, and we have already done a webinar that looks at some reforms in Arizona and Utah, allowing for non-lawyer ownership of law firms and non-lawyer representation of clients before the courts. And an access to justice sort of thing was the spearhead in Arizona. And in Utah, the Supreme Court runs the Legal Center for Innovation. And you have to petition the Utah Supreme Court to have your alternative business structure approved. You can see who's applying. It's not the law firms, John, to your point. It's the technology firms, LegalZoom, Rocket Lawyer, these sorts of entities. There's only a handful of law firms who are playing in the sandbox. But many, many states are looking at what's going on in Utah, Arizona, and I think are going to quickly follow. California, New York, Florida among them. So I think as a managing partner of a law firm, you need to have your antenna up and look at what's coming in terms of alternative legal service providers and how that just might be impacting your business and technology and these reforms that are starting to gain a toehold. Of all places, Utah, Arizona. But I think we're going to see it spread like wildfire across the country in the coming years. So keep your antenna up. Change is all around us.
Yeah, lawyers sometimes don't lobby all that effectively together. An example of just how inept we as an industry can be, we publish all of our documents. Our documents are put into the public domain, a lot of which are filed with SEC filings, and then these alternative legal services basically scrape, copy them, and third-party services do it, and they sell them. And they sell them under a service in which they put a disclaimer that says we're not practicing law, but they're selling our documents that we drafted, and we haven't done anything. The ABA hasn't really done anything to address it, and so. There's a fight coming. It's slowly coming, but if you look at what's happening in Europe and Asia, you'll see that we're effectively heading towards a collision between these technology law tech firms and law firms.
And don't forget the big four. And boy, they run the biggest law firms, among the biggest law firms on the planet. Deloitte, E&Y, KPMG, and the big four. John, this is your last slide, and we're a little bit behind schedule here, and I want to give Uri some chance to throw out some questions. We have a couple more audience polling, but what do you want to talk about here on this slide?
So just a couple of high-level thoughts. So we're going to a hybrid policy. We have had a number of starts and stops. We were about to go back, and then we did have a series of COVID cases. They actually were not in office. They were out of office, mostly through weddings that our team members attended. But these are some of the things that we're taking into consideration. So there's a big tax fight coming. It will take me forever to explain it if you don't know about it, but the hybrid policy will create those issues between the jurisdictions. And for the employer who is required to collect and actually pay the local or state income tax, there will be implications there. Just be mindful of that. There's other significant considerations such as security and privacy and mental health challenges. In office, if you are coming back, do you have to have or should you have air purifiers or an upgrade to your HVAC system in order to protect yourself in the event that you do have an outbreak? And then some of these other things are just obvious factors that you should take into consideration. One of which always shocks me that we never seem to know how to deal with our kids in office. Some people think that it's fine. Others are very frustrated by it just because they don't want more people exposing them. And then probably the biggest fight or issue that's coming up is your vaccination policy. I think I just read yesterday or the day before the first major mandatory vaccination lawsuit was just filed challenging the employer's ability to do that. So that's an interesting policy and topic. We as a firm have not decided on a policy. I know that a lot of our clients are trying to figure out their official position. And we just hosted a webinar, is very well attended on this particular topic. And then other considerations is just continuing to adopt technology and innovations in order to make a hybrid policy work. And by the way, one of the most important considerations for us, according to our employees, and this will be my final point, is the commute. Our employees really enjoy not having to commute 5 days a week or even 6 or 7 days a week. And so they feel like especially with our weather in February in Cleveland, although I think everybody experienced what we experienced not too long ago, our weather in February in particular in Cleveland can be pretty brutal. So commute times can be not 30 minutes. They could be an hour and a half, 2 hours. And so the feedback we've received is that people really do enjoy picking up that time where they're not spent in the car commuting. I do, however, agree with Michael. I miss the commute because it was my separation and a way for me to unwind. And now I go from my 3rd floor office down to my 1st floor, and that's not much of a commute. So with that said, this is a tough call. We're going to go to a hybrid. It'll probably be 2 days in, 3 days out, and then hopefully pivot as the summer comes to a 3 days in, 2 days out. And I think that'll appease call it the 50-50 split within our firm as to how to approach a go-forward policy. And if productivity continues to go up and down, we'll adapt based on productivity and measuring that and go from there. But happy to answer any questions. Hopefully this was informative.
John, when we had our rehearsal call Monday, you talked about, this going hybrid's a lot more complex and challenging than you might think once you get in there and start grappling with these issues.
Yeah.
What advice would you offer folks on today's call who are starting to sense this is a little more challenging than it might appear at first look?
It is. I almost wish I was as strong as Michael and just said, we're coming back, because now that we're trying to draft a hybrid policy, you realize that, you've opened up Pandora's box. And what do I mean by that? It's what you're going to end up with, and I think this is what we're ending up with, and I'm not sure this is probably the best result, but it's going to be an individual policy by employee. Every employee is going to want to have their own policy, and so you're going to have to be willing to accommodate them. And currently, there's childcare issues. A lot of kids that their schools are not open. You have to take that into account. You have some people with immunocompromised conditions. You have to take that into account. You have some older employees who feel more at risk. You have younger employees who want to be in the environment, and so. I hate to say it, but a hybrid policy really is going to become a individual employee by employee policy. And then you're going to have the issue of staff versus attorneys. How do you handle that? Which, I'll be candid with everybody, we're dealing with it. Do we have one policy for staff, which they're back, and are attorneys free to go work at a Starbucks or work from home? And like I said, as I said on the rehearsal call, in many ways, looking at this, I kind of like Michael's approach, which is we're going back and we're going back.
Michael's walking away with it. Michael's walking away with it, guys.
Right. So
Uri,
I
let
was
me
always told
jump in. You've been
to
so
keep it.
patient and listening out, and you've got a bunch of questions from our guest speakers. And why don't you queue up a few of those, and I'll get to our next polling question as well.
Sure. So, John, you alluded to it a few times, and certainly, John, you mentioned it as a challenge. We got a lot of questions, and during today's session, we also got a lot of questions, particularly around the culture of collaboration. And I'll give you some specifics, right? And by the way, after this list, Michael, you've gone through some thought process during the last year to think about this, so maybe you have some thoughts also, and maybe to help push your decision on going more in person, which is, how do you build the culture of collaboration, particularly for onboarding, training, mentoring, and I'll throw in one more, a summer program, when you're allowing people to be working from home?
I'll tell you, that's the hardest thing. And I'll be brief, and I want to hear Michael's thoughts on this. We haven't figured it out. So right now we've fully adopted and integrated Teams, and everybody uses it. We host, during the pandemic, it was a weekly firm and partner call. So we were seeing each other vis-a-vis Teams. One of the things that drives me crazy is when everyone shuts their video off and you're talking and staring at, 50 blank screens.
Witness protection program.
Yeah, right. You don't know if people are in their pajamas or if they're in,
They are.
Yeah, who knows? So the point though is we haven't figured that out. So our goal with the hybrid is to use the days in the office to really address doing that. And then we used to have an event at least once a month where it was in office. There may or may not have been some alcoholic beverages involved, and that was our way of maintaining culture and morale, and we haven't been able to do that. So getting back to the office and navigating the COVID situation, but getting some of that back in is important to us. Michael, your thoughts?
I was always told, keep it simple, stupid, and that's what we've done, John. You pointed out, that the hybrid is complicated, and we've eliminated a lot of that complication. We've been back in the office since July in our suburban offices, and in September in our Manhattan office. And so, and we've onboarded 15 new hires throughout the pandemic, from staff to partner, and we're upfront with them. We are a firm that's in the office that's important to us, and every one of them, perhaps they were paying lip service, but it was important to them as well. And in fact, a few of them who have been going to the office, again, the nature of the business is real estate, it's transactional, right? So some of the lawyers have been going into the business and noted absentee leadership because the partners weren't there. And so, yeah, it's a lot easier when to integrate people if you're in person. Now, you're walking around in masks, but you can work together, collaborate in a socially distanced and safe manner. When we were home, because we had to be home legally, and we functioned quite nicely, and we use Zoom and we use Teams, and John and you and I are similar when it comes to looking at blank screens on a Teams meeting. But I used to do coffee talk every week with people, or lunch with the MP, and I had people showing up in bathrobes and baseball hats, and frankly, I'd rather see a blank screen than that.
Yeah.
Funny. Boy, we're all zoomed out, aren't we? Let me throw another polling question out at our audience here, Uri, and then I'll come back to you. And you've heard, I'm sure everyone's been talking about this, reading about this, thinking about this, and you've heard from two managing partners, mid-sized law firms. What's your opinion, personal opinion, about return to office? And we put in there, I strongly think that people need to get back in as soon as possible. I prefer that, but I recognize we have to not adapt, but adopt. I'm all about going forward with the hybrid model, or you know what? I'm still on the fence trying to figure it out. And as people are voting, I'm going to ask our guest speakers to predict what they think our audience might say to this question. And John, let me ask you first. Where do you think most people stand on this?
If you're asking me, I think probably it's going to be the second one.
Okay, Michael?
Totally agree.
You might be surprised. Hang on, let me share. This is a multi-step process when you
Ooh, close.
But, you know, it's interesting. We ask, what's the long-term impact of COVID? We've asked that question many times, different formats, and there's about 10, 12% of managing partners who think we need to get back to normal. We need to get back to the office as soon as possible. We can't run a successful law firm any other way. And sure enough, there it is, that 10, 12% who strongly favor we got to get back to the office to run a successful law firm. Uri, what do you think of those responses?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. Strongly favoring hybrid got quite as many. I'm not sure because you put the remote working model in there together. I think some people are starting to accept the remote working model. It's not really their preference, but they're going to accept it. And I think that maybe got some votes in that category.
You think people are coming around to this? Folks that used to be hell bent, you know, we need to have people here. You think there's changing opinions on this topic?
I do. I think people recognize that the horse is out of the barn and it's going to be hard to bring everybody back, meaning like it or not. How's that?
Yeah, I think we'll send you some nice articles. Cushman Wakefield does some nice stuff, and they're a proponent of the hybrid model, and they're selling office space, recognizing that this is just reality and the way tomorrow's professionals want to work. And you look at accounting, you look at consulting, and it's almost the exception when you run into people who work in a downtown office. It seems like the world is moving remotely. Uri, what you got in terms of questions?
Ooh, I'm going to combine a double header here. Any tech, it's been referred to a few times, and there's a couple different ways to go at this, but talk to us about staff. Somebody referred in their question to how do you handle the animosity between lawyers when lawyers are allowed to work from Starbucks or their home, as John said, and staff must come in. And then a related question is, you've both alluded to productivity being the measure that's going to drive a lot of these decisions. Is it productivity? Do they have to be in the office? Can you measure staff productivity?
John, I'll let you take that because it sounds like you might be.
Yeah, that's in Pinney's court. I think
with...
that was good punt there.
Yeah.
So we at first, when we went remote, we saw pretty consistent productivity, and then candidly, we saw a decline. So in order to address that, we have asked our staff now to record their time and submit billable hour entries. We have some pushback on that. There's been a learning.
How'd that go over?
Yeah. But actually it's helping us understand a little bit more about what they're doing with their day and inefficiencies. And from a management standpoint, it's been rather insightful. And so that'll help us understand what they're doing and actually how we can probably make our staff overall more efficient. It's not perfect, but I will say this, I am leaning towards, and I need to talk to our leadership team, towards having staff full-time back or going to a 4-to-1 with 1 day out and 4 days in. And dealing with the animosity is something that we're just going to have to take head on and talk about the fact that you know, it's important that our staff are there and explain why and put it in context so that we don't create the sense that they're being treated differently for the wrong reasons.
You know, we're hearing that a lot of smaller mid-sized firms are centralizing a lot of their operations and consolidating them and full-time, you know, the billing, the collections, the intake, a lot of those functions, the old word processing pool. You know, we all don't need a personal paralegal and a personal legal assistant. We can all work from a pool that's in the office, and one model. I have another client down in Florida, a defense firm, and they monitor their staff very closely, stealthily, their activities online and the keystrokes and when they log in and when they log out. And the staff don't necessarily know that they're being watched. and monitored. I don't know that I'd want to work for a firm like that, but you know, firms are doing some interesting things to try to keep an eye on that staff productivity. Uri, we got one more polling question I'm going to toss out to our audience, and that is about the has your firm figured it out? Do you have that? Have you figured it out? Yes or no? In terms of how you're going to handle this work from home situation, and if you would, it's a yes or no question. So we don't give you work in progress as an option. And Uri, you think most people got their plan in place?
No.
John?
No, but I think after hearing me and Michael, most of them are just going to say they're not going to have one. They're going to follow Michael.
Michael, what do you think? You think most folks on the call have sort of figured out what they want to do?
No, I don't think they'd be tuning into this if they did, if they had all the answers. So no.
And yeah, that was kind of a loaded question, wasn't it? That's why they're here, is to help them figure it out. And hopefully we've provided some insight. And our follow-up material that we'll send, we're going to try to put together some nice articles that help you along and trying to figure this stuff out. Uri, we are almost, told you the hour would fly by, and it has. Uri, what you got before we, any question you want to put to John and Michael?
A question actually for both of them, as people are really stuck with their leases and they do come up. What are you going to do different? Not just smaller, but are you repurposing your offices? And I think they both can answer that question.
I'll jump in. I would say probably more hoteling space, more collaboration space. Just try to be more efficient with your footprint, and recognize that with less file cabinet space and needs like that in storage areas, you could just probably reduce your footprint by 20-30% and save the overhead, and embrace the fact that, you know, we are seeing a change in the way that we conduct business for a lot of firms, and you know, save the costs in doing so and be more efficient.
We couldn't be any more opposite. We actually expanded our office during COVID out in Westchester. We took more space.
Wow.
We've already filled it up. And we're busting at the seams in Manhattan. But in full disclosure, we have 10 years left on our lease in Manhattan.
You're stuck.
So we're not in the 2 to 3 year like John. But yeah, we're all in, you know, in regards to our office space.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your participation today, your preparation. We really do appreciate it. Michael Hurley and John Pinney. This is advice. Uri and I, we came up with this slide deck early in the pandemic. Guidance to managing partners: stay cool, calm, and collected. Communicate. People are looking to you. John talked about some town halls and some things they have set up. We've heard from managing partners about the importance of the practice groups and the trivia nights and the happy hours, and trying, you know, virtual is not as fun as being together, but you know what? We're doing the best we can to plod through this, maintain our culture, our collaboration. Communicate, stay cool, calm, and collected. Call in the experts as needed. People are watching you. Your credibility is on the line. Uri, you get the last shot here. Anything you want to share to close us out this month?
Well, we started the same way as we'll close. This is obviously the issue that's going to be with us for a long time. And as some of the questions that came in, there's stuff beyond COVID. I mean, we're hoping the next couple of months we're going to be coming out of the medical condition, which means the daycare conditions, as it's been alluded to a few times. So the decisions people make now is not just related to COVID, but it's on the other side of COVID. What will our firms look like? So it's an important topic. John, I'm glad you've decided to make the next session on sort of a working group on this topic, and I think it's going to be a good one as well.
Yeah, we have a call in. We run a listserv, and one of the managing partners on that listserv has initiated a kind of a discussion where managing partners going to get together, share. It'll be a much more interactive type thing. We're going to do a follow-up next month to try to offer further guidance to managing partners who are figuring out, trying to figure out, this really timely issue. It's right here, and we are working through. The vaccines are coming. We start to see some light at the end of the tunnel. Michael, you made a great point at the beginning. What was your tolerance for remote working going into this? And, once this fades, hopefully soon, will we have changed, or are we going to have fundamentally the same attitudes and opinions about, how we want to work together as a group of professionals? So these are the contact information for John and Michael, and both have agreed if you want to carry forth the conversation, please feel free to reach out. John said last time he was a speaker, he got lots of contact. And was it someone who wanted to buy your office furniture, John?
No, they were trying to sell me office furniture.
Didn't they hear that you were downsizing?
Right. I don't know. I'm not sure what they were trying to do, but
you're going to upgrade. You're going to be smaller but classier. How's that?
Right.
Well, thank you very much, John, Michael. We really do appreciate your sharing your perspectives, your candor about a really timely topic for most law firms here in the U.S. and across the world, for that matter. Uri Gutfreund, always good to see you, my friend. Stay well, stay safe.
You too.
And we'll be back first Wednesday in April, and look forward to seeing you all then. And thank you, everybody. We'll send a follow-up. We're recorded, and we'll see you hopefully soon in person in the not-too-distant future. Thanks again.
Thanks, John.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.